That night, I drove my daughter to the airport for what I thought was just another work trip. Everything seemed normal until my grandson, who is only 7 years old, grabbed my hand tightly. His eyes, wide with panic, froze me in place. With a trembling voice, he whispered, "Grandma, don't let's go back to the house. I heard Mama planning something against us this morning. Please, believe me." In that instant, something inside me broke. Without asking any questions, I started the car and fled with him into the dark night. But before we continue, make sure you're already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love to know how far our stories are traveling. My name is Ilara Bynum. I am 70 years old, and until that night, I thought I knew my daughter Candace like the back of my hand. I live with her and my grandson, Devin, ever since the death of my son-in-law, Reggie, 3 years ago. It was a car accident that left deep scars on all of us, especially on little Devin, who has since become an extremely observant and quiet child. That Thursday, we drove Candace to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport for a business trip to Chicago. She's a marketing manager at a big firm and travels frequently. We arrived early. The terminal was relatively empty, and the icy blast of the air conditioning made me hug my thin coat closer to my body. "It'll only be 3 days, Mama." Candace smiled as she adjusted her carry-on bag. "Take good care of Devin, and don't forget his medication." Devin, standing beside me, clutched his dinosaur backpack tightly, watching his mother with intense eyes. He's never been a boy of many words, but that night, he was even quieter than usual. "Everything will be fine, my love. We always make it work, don't we, Devin?" I tried to include my grandson in the conversation, but he just nodded silently. Candace crouched down in front of her son and smoothed the hair falling over his eyes. "Be good for Grandma. Go, Mama, I'll be back soon." She kissed him on the forehead, and Devin remained still, like a small statue. I watched my daughter with a swelling heart. Despite the hardships, she had become a strong, independent woman. After losing her husband, she threw herself into work with even greater determination, perhaps as a way to escape the pain. I admired her resilience, even if I noticed a certain emotional distance growing between us. "I have to go," she said, checking her watch. "Boarding starts in half an hour." We shared a brief hug, a mechanical embrace without much warmth, something that had become common between us lately. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the gate. We watched her silhouette move away until she disappeared into the crowd. "Let's go, Devin. It's getting late," I said, taking my grandson's hand. We walked down the terminal corridor toward the parking garage. Devin didn't say a single word the whole way. His silence didn't worry me. It was just his way. Since his father's accident, he communicated more with looks and gestures than with words. The parking garage was poorly lit. Only a few yellow lamps cast shapeless shadows on the concrete floor. Few cars were parked at this hour. I pressed the alarm button, and the lights of our old Chevy Impala blinked. I started walking toward the car, gently pulling Devin by the hand. That's when I felt it. A strong, almost violent pull. Devin had stopped suddenly and was gripping my wrist with such force that his small fingernails left marks on my wrinkled skin. I turned around confused. "What is it, sweetie?" I asked, bending down to his level. Devin's face was pale beneath the yellowish light of the pole. His eyes, always watchful, were now wide with pure terror. I had never seen such an expression on his little face. A chill ran down my spine. "Grandma," he whispered, so softly that I had to lean in to hear. "Don't let's go back to the house. Please believe me." I stood there confused, thinking maybe he was afraid of the empty house without his mother. "Don't worry, my love. We'll be fine. Just the two of us for a few days." He shook his head vigorously, gripping my wrist even harder. "No, Grandma, don't go back to the house," he repeated, his voice now cracking. "This morning, I heard Mama on the phone in the home office. She was talking about us." My heart pounded. "What did you hear, Devin?" He swallowed, his lips trembling slightly. He leaned in even closer to my ear. "Mama said, after we fell asleep, that everything was ready. She said, make sure there are no mistakes. The gas has to look like an accidental leak." My blood froze in my veins. I stood paralyzed, staring at those innocent eyes that now carried the weight of a terrible secret. "Please, Grandma." His voice was a shaky thread. "Believe me this time." That last sentence hit me like a slap. I remembered other times Devin had tried to warn me, when he said he saw his mother hiding papers in the office, when he mentioned she had spent all night messing with the kitchen pipes. I had always thought they were just stories from a child trying to get attention. My hands started shaking. I didn't want to believe it. It was impossible that Candace, my own daughter, could be plotting to kill us. But the terror in Devin's eyes was too real. "Okay, baby," I whispered, stroking his pale cheek. "I believe you. We're not going home tonight." The relief in his gaze was immediate and so profound that it dispelled any lingering doubt I might have had. He knew. Somehow, this 7-year-old child had uncovered a horrific plan. I stood up on shaky legs. My mind raced. If what Devin was saying was true, we couldn't just go to a hotel or a friend's house. Candace could trace the credit card. She could call everyone we knew. I got into the car with Devin, helped him buckle his seatbelt, and sat behind the wheel. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. "Where are we going, Grandma?" Devin asked, his small voice breaking the tense silence. I had no idea. I looked in the rearview mirror at his worried little face and tried to sound confident. "We're going somewhere safe, sweetie. I just need to think for a minute." I started the engine and slowly backed out of the parking spot. We needed time, we needed a plan, and above all, we needed to find out why my own daughter wanted us dead. I drove for almost an hour with no clear destination, just getting further away from our house. Devin fell asleep in the back seat, overcome by emotional exhaustion. I occasionally glanced at him in the mirror, his face serene in contrast to the terror he had shown in the parking garage. How could a child so small bear such a heavy secret? As I drove through the increasingly deserted city streets, my mind worked frantically, trying to connect the dots. Candace had changed in recent months. That was undeniable. More distant, more impatient, always locked in the home office making calls in hushed tones. I had attributed everything to grief, work stress, and the pressures of being a single mother. But now, recalling every detail, every strange look, every interrupted conversation when I walked into the room, a sinister pattern began to form. I stopped the car at a 24-hour gas station on the outskirts of the city. We needed a plan, and I needed to think clearly. I bought a watery cup of coffee from the convenience store and returned to the car, watching Devin, who was still asleep. That's when my cell phone vibrated in my coat pocket. Candace's name lit up the screen. My heart leapt. Her flight should have taken off hours ago. Why was she calling? With trembling hands, I answered. "Hello? Hey, Mama." Candace's voice sounded strangely calm. "Where are you? You should have been home an hour ago." A shiver ran down my back. How did she know we weren't home? "Oh, we decided to stop for dinner," I lied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Devin was hungry." A silence on the other end. "I see. And where are you having dinner?" "At that restaurant near the shopping center," I replied vaguely. "Shouldn't you be on the plane?" "There was a problem with the flight," she said quickly. "It was rescheduled for early tomorrow. I'm heading back home now." I froze. That made no sense. Candace always checked flight schedules meticulously. She would never let an unexpected event like that happen. "Oh, what a shame," I replied, trying to sound natural. "Well, we'll see you at home later then?" "Yes, of course," she said, her voice suddenly sweet. "Don't worry about rushing. Enjoy your dinner. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." I hung up and stared at the phone. It was a trap. She was checking to see if we had figured anything out. Maybe she had cameras at the house. Maybe she realized Devin had overheard her that morning. Devin stirred in the back seat, slowly opening his eyes. "Was that Mama?" he asked with a shrewdness that scared me. I nodded, unable to hide the truth from those perceptive eyes. "She said the flight was canceled. She's coming back home." Devin's eyes widened in terror. "She knows, Grandma. She knows we found out." I took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in my hands. "Devin, I need you to tell me exactly what you heard this morning. Everything. Every single detail." He sat up straight, smoothing his wrinkled t-shirt. He looked much older than his 7 years as he began to speak. "Mama woke up really early. I heard her in the hallway and thought she was making breakfast, but she went to the office and closed the door." He hesitated, looking down. "I know I shouldn't have, but I went over there and listened behind the door." "It's okay, sweetie. Keep going." She was talking really low, but I managed to hear. She said, "Yes, they'll be alone. 3 days is enough time for it to look like an accident. The gas leak during the night while they sleep, nobody will suspect." Devin paused, taking a deep breath, and then said something about papers and insurance money. She said, "Once they're out of the way, I can finally access everything." A shiver ran through my body. Insurance papers. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. 6 months ago, my late husband Reggie had left the documents for a substantial life insurance policy. Candace knew that I was the primary beneficiary with specific clauses that allotted a considerable portion to Devin, which he could only access when he turned 21. Candace was the fund administrator, but she couldn't touch the money. Not while I was alive. There was also the house that belonged to Reggie and me, and which, after his death, passed entirely to me. Candace lived with us, but the property was mine, a property that was constantly appreciating with the neighborhood's growth. "Devin?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Did you hear your mother talking about money or Grandpa's insurance before?" He nodded slowly. "Lots of times. She always gets very angry when she talks about it. Once she said on the phone that she was stuck because of us." Every word was like a knife in my heart. My own daughter plotting to kill us for money. It was so absurd, so monstrous, that my mind resisted accepting it. But the evidence was all there. The change in her behavior, the sudden interest in financial matters, the constant questions about my will, the business trips that seemed to spring up from nowhere, and now this fake, canceled trip. She wanted to catch us off guard. She wanted to ensure we would be home sleeping when the accident happened. "What are we going to do, Grandma?" Devin asked, his small voice bringing me back to reality. I looked at this extraordinary child who had sensed the danger before I did, who had saved our lives with his observation and courage. "First, we're going to get even farther away," I replied, starting the car engine again. "And then we're going to get evidence." "Evidence?" Devin asked, confused. "Yes, sweetie, proof that shows your mother is planning something terrible, something we can take to the police." Devin nodded gravely. This was not a conversation a grandmother should be having with her grandson. It was not a weight a child should carry. But we were in this together. It was just the two of us against someone I never would have imagined as an enemy. As I drove through the night, an idea began to form in my mind. A risky plan, but one that might give us the proof we needed. "Devin," I said, looking at him in the rearview mirror, "do you remember Mr. Harrison, the doorman at our old apartment building?" He nodded. Wallace Harrison was an old friend, a discreet and reliable man who had worked for decades in the building where we lived before moving into the house. "I think we need to pay him a visit," I said, steering toward the old neighborhood. It was a risky gamble, but at that moment we didn't have many options. We needed a safe place to spend the night, and more importantly, we needed help to expose Candace before she could try again. The car's clock read 1:20 a.m. when we finally reached the old building. My heart pounded as I parked on the parallel street, away from the building's security cameras. If Candace was truly looking for us, we couldn't leave clues. "Stay here for just a minute, Devin," I said, turning off the engine. "Grandma is going to check if Mr. Harrison is on the night shift." I got out of the car and walked quickly to the security booth, staying in the shadows. The booth was lit, and to my relief, there was Wallace Harrison, his wrinkled face bent over a crossword magazine. I tapped lightly on the glass, and he looked up, confused at first, then surprised to recognize me. "Ms. Alara!" He stood up, opening the booth door. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Wallace, forgive me for showing up like this, I spoke in a low voice, looking nervously around. But I have a serious problem. I need your help. The small staff apartment in the back of the building was simple but cozy. Wallace had lived there since his wife passed away 10 years ago. It was a discreet space with a separate entrance, invisible to anyone who didn't know the building well, perfect for what we needed, a temporary hiding place. Devin was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping hot chocolate that Wallace had made. The old doorman watched us with concern, still processing the incredible story I had just told him. "Ms. Alara," Wallace finally spoke, his grave voice breaking the silence. "Are you sure about this? It's a very serious accusation against your own daughter." I sighed heavily. "I know, Wallace, it sounds like madness. I don't want to believe it myself." I looked at Devin, who kept his eyes fixed on the cup. But I can't ignore what Devin heard, and there are other signs that I'm only now connecting. Wallace nodded slowly, rubbing his wrinkled chin. He had known our family for decades. He had seen Candace grow up. He had wept at my husband's funeral. "What do you plan to do, Ms. Alara?" he asked. "We need proof," I replied, my mind still working on the plan that had started to form in the car. "If we go to the police now, with just the testimony of a 7-year-old and my suspicions, they won't take us seriously. Candace is respected. She has a solid career. They'll say it's just a misunderstanding, or worse, that I'm becoming senile." Wallace frowned but didn't disagree. He knew I was right. "And where do I fit into this story?" he asked. "I need to go back to the house," I said, feeling Devin tense up beside me. "Not to stay, but to look for evidence. I need to know exactly what Candace was planning, and I need Devin to stay here safely while I do that." "No, Grandma," Devin exclaimed, putting the mug down on the table with a thud. "It's dangerous. Mama might come back." I took his cold little hands in mine. "I know, sweetie, but I'm going to be careful. I'm just going to take a quick look in her office to see if I can find any clues. I'll be in and out before she realizes." Devin shook his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "I don't want you to go. I don't want to stay alone." "You won't be alone," I reassured him. "Mr. Harrison will stay with you, and I promise I'll be back soon." "You shouldn't go alone," Wallace intervened, worry evident on his face. "If what you say is true, it's too risky." "I don't have a choice," I replied. "If Candace finds out we know something, she can destroy any evidence, or worse, she might try something more direct." I shuddered at the possibilities. I need to act now, while she still believes we suspect nothing. Wallace sighed, running his hand through his gray hair. "At least let me drive you there. I'll wait in the car on the corner. If you don't come out in 20 minutes, I'm calling the police." I nodded. It was better than going completely alone. "I want to go too," Devin insisted. "No, sweetie," I said firmly. "It's too dangerous. I need you to stay here, safe. I promise I'll be back." After more insistence, Devin finally gave in, but not before hugging me with enough force to take my breath away. "Promise you'll be careful, Grandma," he whispered in my ear. "Promise me." "I promise you," I replied, kissing his forehead. Wallace lent us an old burner phone, the kind without registration, so we could communicate without using my phone, which Candace might trace. We agreed on the codes. 1 ring, and hang up meant I was fine. 2 rings meant trouble. After making sure Devin was comfortable on the small sofa bed in the apartment, with strict instructions to lock the door and not open it for anyone but us, Wallace and I left, heavy-hearted about what I was about to do. The dashboard clock read 1:20 a.m. when we stopped a block away from my house. The streets were completely deserted, just a few lampposts casting long shadows on the asphalt. "I have a bad feeling about this, Ms. Alara," Wallace murmured, turning off the engine. "Are you sure you want to go?" I swallowed, observing the dark silhouette of my house at the end of the street. The windows were all dark. There was no sign of Candace's car in the driveway. "I don't have a choice," I repeated, more to convince myself than him. 20 minutes, just like we agreed. If I don't come back or call the police." Wallace nodded gravely. "God protect you." I got out of the car and walked quickly down the sidewalk, keeping to the shadows. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure anyone yards away could hear it. The house was silent when I used my key to enter through the back door. I closed it softly behind me and stood still in the dark kitchen, listening intently. There was nothing but the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick-tock of the living room clock. I took out the small flashlight I had brought and illuminated the path to the hallway. I needed to reach Candace's office on the second floor without making a sound. Every floorboard that creaked under my feet seemed like thunder in the silence of the house. Reaching the foot of the stairs, I froze. A strange smell floated in the air, sweet and chemical at the same time. I sniffed again, trying to identify it. It wasn't gas. It was something different, something that shouldn't be there. Climbing the stairs seemed like an eternity, each step carefully calculated to avoid the steps that usually creaked. In the second-floor hallway, I stopped in front of Candace's office door. It was locked, as I expected. I took out the hairpin I had prepared from my pocket. Years ago, when Candace was a teenager and locked her room door during her tantrums, I had learned to pick simple locks like this one. I never thought I would use that skill in a situation like this. After a few tense minutes, I heard the satisfying click of the lock yielding. I pushed the door open slowly, praying the hinges wouldn't squeak. Candace's office was immaculately organized, as always, shelves with books on management and marketing, a dark wood desk with a closed laptop, a leather swivel chair, nothing out of place. I closed the door behind me and started my search. The laptop was password protected, so I focused on the physical documents. I carefully opened drawers, examined folders, and searched every corner for anything suspicious. It was in the third desk drawer that I found something. A red folder different from the others, hidden under a pile of company documents. Inside were bank statements I had never seen before, accounts and names I didn't recognize, large money transfers to a certain M. Sellers, and most alarming, a copy of my life insurance policy with handwritten notes in the margin about values and payout clauses. My heart pounded. It was real. Everything Devin had heard was real. My own daughter was plotting. A noise downstairs interrupted my thoughts. The unmistakable sound of the front door opening. I froze, blood chilling in my veins. Candace was back. I quickly grabbed my cell phone and dialed Wallace's number. 2 rings, then I hung up. The signal for trouble. Immediately, I photographed the most incriminating documents with the phone's camera. There was no time to examine everything, but I needed evidence. I put the folder back exactly as I found it and hid behind the office door, turning off the flashlight. I heard footsteps on the stairs now, slow and deliberate steps. It didn't sound like Candace's firm, hurried walk. It was more cautious. Adrenaline surged through my veins. I was cornered. If I left the office, I would be seen. If I stayed, I would be found when Candace came in to work in the morning. Or worse, if she decided to enter the office now. The steps stopped in the hallway. I could hear breathing on the other side of the door. A shadow moved under the door crack, blocking the faint hallway light. Someone was out there, standing, as if listening. I held my breath, feeling cold sweat run down my back. The door handle slowly began to turn. The office door opened a few inches with an almost imperceptible groan. I stayed motionless, pressed against the wall behind the door, barely breathing. The darkness was my only ally. Now, a silhouette was cast on the office floor. It wasn't Candace. The height was different, taller and wider. A man. The shadow stood still for a few moments, as if whoever it was listening intently. Then Candace's voice came from downstairs, muffled by the distance. "Marcus, is everything clear up there?" My heart stopped for a second. Marcus, the same name that appeared on the bank statements, M. Sellers. "Just checking," a deep male voice replied, only a few feet away from me. "The house is empty. No sign of them. I told you something was wrong." Candace's voice sounded irritated now, closer. "They should be here. The plan was for tomorrow night, after I got back from the trip. Now the timeline is all messed up." Candace's steps were coming up the stairs. I was trapped between 2 people who were apparently plotting my death. My only way out was the office window, which opened onto a narrow ledge over the backyard. A dangerous fall for anyone, lethal for a 70-year-old woman. I said involving the kid was risky. the male voice continued, now moving away from the door toward the hallway. "Kids are unpredictable. He might have heard something." "Impossible," Candace replied, now in the hallway. "Devin never wakes up before 7, and I always talk in the office with the door closed. Besides, even if he did hear, who would believe a 7-year-old? A dull thump came from downstairs, followed by a muffled curse. "What was that?" Candace asked, alarmed. "I don't know," Marcus replied. "I'll check. You keep getting her room ready." The man's footsteps quickly retreated down the stairs. Candace stayed in the hallway for a few more seconds. Then I heard her steps heading to my room at the end of the hall. My mind raced. Her room, getting my room ready. What were they doing? And what was that noise downstairs? Wallace must have come into the house after receiving my trouble signal. My old friend, trying to help me, was now also in danger. I slipped out from behind the door, moving slowly to avoid making noise. Through the crack in the door, I could see the hallway was empty. Now, on tiptoes, I approached the office window. I needed to get out of there and call the police. Not only was my life in danger, but so was Wallace's, and most importantly, Devin's. I opened the window with extreme care, avoiding any sound. The ledge was narrower than I imagined, only about 1 foot wide. Below, the 20-foot drop ended in the backyard grass. In other times, I wouldn't even consider this option, but desperation is a powerful motivator. I put 1 foot outside, feeling the cold morning air. I had to gather all my courage to put the other leg through the window and balance precariously on the ledge. My joints protested. Arthritis is no joke at 70, but fear gave me an agility I didn't know I still possessed. Suddenly, I heard agitated voices downstairs, a dull thud followed by a groan. My heart clenched as I recognized Wallace's voice. They had caught him. "Who else is with you, old man?" Marcus's rough voice echoed through the house. "How did you know to come in here?" I couldn't hear Wallace's response, but the sound of something heavy falling made me shudder. I closed my eyes for a second, silently begging my old friend's forgiveness. I couldn't help him now. Our best chance was for me to escape and find help. I started moving sideways along the ledge, inch by inch, my back pressed against the wall, my fingers clutching the rough texture. Sweat ran down my face despite the cold night. There was a lattice covered in ivy on the corner of the house. If I could reach it, maybe I could use it to climb down to the garden. It was risky, but less so than jumping straight down. "Candace, I found someone," Marcus's voice shouted from inside the house. "An old guy trying to sneak in the back way." "What? Who is he?" My daughter's voice sounded distant, coming from my room. "He won't talk, but he seems to know your mother. She must be nearby." I froze on the ledge. They knew I was in the house. The search would intensify. I no longer had time for caution. I needed to act. With a surge of adrenaline, I reached the lattice and began to climb down, ignoring the pain in my joints and the scratches from the wooden stakes. I half slipped, half climbed the last few feet, landing awkwardly on the grass with a dull thud that sent a jolt of pain through my left hip. There was no time to mourn. I staggered to my feet and ran as quietly as I could across the backyard toward the low wall that divided our property from the Miller family's house next door. As I scurried through the shadow of the trees, I heard the office window being opened violently. A flashlight beam swept the yard, almost catching me. I ducked behind a bush, holding my breath. "Is anyone down there?" Marcus's voice boomed through the night. "I'm going to check. Keep the old man tied up." I scrambled over the wall with difficulty, falling onto the other side into the Miller's yard. Our elderly neighbors, who fortunately were heavy sleepers and traveling. I ran across their lawn, skirting the house, feeling a sharp twinge in my hip with every step. When I reached the parallel street, I was already gasping for breath. But fear kept me going. I got as far away from the house as possible, running through the shadows until I reached a main avenue where a few bars were still open, with people on the sidewalk. I grabbed the burner phone and dialed 911 with trembling hands. As I waited for someone to answer, I checked the photos I had taken of the documents in the office. The proof we needed was there. "Police, what is your emergency?" The operator's calm voice sounded on the phone. My name is Alara Bynum, I said, trying to control the tremble in my voice. I need to report an attempted murder. My daughter is plotting to kill me and my grandson for insurance money. She has an accomplice, and they just captured a friend of mine who tried to help me. There was a pause on the other end. I could imagine what the operator was thinking. Just another paranoid old woman imagining conspiracies. "Ma'am, where are you right now?" he asked, his tone professional but cautious. "On the I-85 service road, near the 500 block. I'm running from my house. Please, I need you to send patrols to 237 Magnolia Lane. My friend Wallace Harrison is in mortal danger." "Do you have any proof of these accusations?" "I have photographed documents and a witness, my 7-year-old grandson, who heard my daughter planning everything." I hesitated, then added, "I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Please, there's no time to lose." As I spoke, a patrol car passed slowly down the avenue. I waved frantically, still holding the phone to my ear. To my relief, the patrol car stopped. 2 police officers got out, approaching with cautious expressions. "The police are here," I told the operator. "I'm going to explain the situation to them." The next few minutes were a blur. I quickly explained the situation to the officers, showing them the photos of the documents on the phone. I mentioned Devin, safe in Wallace's apartment, and Wallace's own situation, possibly injured and held hostage in my house. Something in my urgency, or the evidence I presented, must have convinced the police. One of them spoke into the radio, requesting backup, while the other helped me into the patrol car. "We'll rescue your friend first," said the older officer, a man whose face was marked by years of service. "Then we'll find your grandson. Can you give us the exact address of where he is?" I provided the address of the old building and instructions on how to reach the staff apartment. My worry now was that Candace and her accomplice, realizing I had escaped, might figure out where Devin was. Would she remember Wallace and our old friendship? The patrol car sped through the nearly deserted streets at that hour of the morning. 2 other patrol cars followed us, sirens silent, only their lights flashing in the night. My heart pounded as we approached my house. "There's an entry through the back," I explained to the officer, "the kitchen door. Wallace must be downstairs." We stopped at a safe distance. The police asked me to wait in the patrol car while they surrounded the house. I watched, distressed, as they positioned themselves, communicating via radios. It seemed like an eternity, though it was probably only a few minutes. Then, everything happened very quickly. I heard police officers shouting, "Freeze!" followed by the sound of breaking glass. A door slammed violently. More shouts, a crash, and then silence. Minutes later, I saw Wallace being helped out of the house by 2 officers. My old friend was limping with a visible cut on his forehead, but he was alive. I felt such immense relief that tears streamed down my face. Immediately after, Marcus came out in handcuffs, escorted by 2 officers. He was a hefty man with tattoos on his arms and a furious expression on his face. I waited, heart pounding, for Candace, but she didn't appear. The older officer approached the patrol car where I was waiting. "The house is clear, ma'am, but your daughter isn't here. It seems she fled out the back when she realized we'd arrived." A chill ran down my spine. "Devin," I whispered, "we need to get to my grandson before she does." The patrol car sliced through the night at full speed, siren blaring. This time I sat in the back seat, my hands twisting with anxiety. Beside me, Wallace, with a makeshift bandage on his forehead, seemed equally worried. "She didn't know where we were," he said, trying to calm me. "I didn't mention the apartment when they caught me." But I couldn't be calmed. A dark premonition was growing in my chest. Candace was smart. She knew my old friends, my old habits. If she remembered Wallace, she might deduce where to look. When we arrived at the old building, my heart almost stopped. The service door leading to the staff apartment was ajar. "Stay here," the officer ordered, drawing his weapon. But I couldn't obey. I jumped out of the patrol car and ran after him, ignoring the protests. Wallace followed me, limping. The hallway was dark and silent. The apartment door was closed, apparently untouched. The officer knocked 3 times. "Devin," I called, my voice trembling. "Devin, sweetie, it's Grandma. Are you there?" Silence. A silence that pierced my ears like needles. The officer tried the handle. Locked. He stepped back a little. Then he lunged with his shoulder, knocking the door down with a crash. The apartment was dark. The officer entered first, turning on his flashlight, followed by Wallace and me. He swept the small space with the beam of light. The kitchen was empty. The living room with the sofa bed was messy. "Devon!" I called again, panic rising in my throat. That's when I noticed something on the sofa bed, a torn piece of paper caught under an empty cup. I took it with trembling hands and read the message written in hurried handwriting. "Mama found me. She said she needs to protect me from you, that you're crazy and making up stories. I'm scared, Grandma. Help!" My knees gave out. Wallace held me before I fell to the floor. "She took him," I murmured, stunned. "Candace took Devon." The officer immediately radioed, reporting the kidnapping of a child. Within minutes, an operation was being mounted. Descriptions of Candace, her car, and Devon. Roadblocks on the city's exits. Alerts on highways and at the airport. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. Candace was meticulous. She had been planning this for months. She certainly had escape routes prepared, perhaps fake documents, and she knew Devon better than anyone. She knew exactly what to say to make him cooperate, even if only temporarily. I was taken to the precinct along with Wallace, where we gave detailed statements. I showed the photos of the documents, recounted everything Devon had heard, and explained about the life insurance and Candace's growing greed. The sergeant, a middle-aged man with deep bags under his eyes, listened to everything attentively. Contrary to what I feared, he didn't treat me like a confused old woman. The evidence was too strong, especially after the accomplice, Marcus's statement, began to corroborate my story. "He's cooperating to reduce his own sentence," the sergeant explained. "He confirmed that your daughter hired him to simulate a gas leak that would kill you and your grandson in your sleep. He was to be paid with a portion of the insurance money." I felt nauseous, hearing the confirmation of that macabre plan. "And what about Devon?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Do you have any leads yet?" The sergeant hesitated. "Not yet, but we're monitoring all routes out of the city. Your daughter won't get far." But I wasn't so sure. The hours passed, and every minute without news increased my anguish. Sitting in the precinct waiting room with an untouched cup of tea, I felt myself aging even more rapidly. Wallace was beside me, silent, occasionally squeezing my hand in solidarity. His face showed worry, but also determination. "We'll find him, Ms. Alara," he said after a long silence. "Devon is a smart kid. He'll find a way to leave us clues." I nodded, trying to cling to that hope. Devon truly was extraordinary. His perception and intelligence had already saved us once. Perhaps they could save him now. That's when I remembered something I had overlooked, something Devon had mentioned days ago, something about Candace and a special place. "Wait," I said, sitting up straight in the chair. "I think I know where she might have taken Devon." Wallace and the officer who was passing by the room looked at me expectantly. 2 weeks ago, Devon mentioned that Candace took him to see a surprise house, a place in the country a few hours from the city. He was excited because there were animals and a lake. At the time, I thought it was just a day trip. The sergeant was called immediately. I explained my suspicion. Candace might be preparing this place as a safe house where she would flee after the accident that would kill us. "Do you know where this property is located?" the sergeant asked. "Not exactly. Devon mentioned it was near a small town. I think the name was something like Willow Creek or Cedar Ridge, something like that. It wasn't much, but it was a clue. Investigators began checking property records recently acquired or rented in towns with those types of names, within a radius of a few hours from the city. Meanwhile, I received alarming news. Candace's car had been found abandoned at a gas station on the highway heading west. She had probably switched vehicles. The search was getting complicated. The clock on the precinct wall read 5:30 in the morning. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten slightly. I hadn't slept for almost 24 hours, but adrenaline and fear kept me alert. That's when my phone, which had been returned after forensics examined the photos, vibrated in my pocket. An unknown number. I answered, my heart pounding. "Hello, Grandma?" Devon's small, scared voice made my heart jump. "Devon, sweetie, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm okay," he whispered. "Mama's sleeping right now. I found her phone and hid it to call you." "You are so brave, my love," I said, trying to keep my voice calm as I frantically signaled to the sergeant, who quickly called a technician to trace the call. "Can you tell me where you are?" "It's a house in the country. It has a lake and lots of trees. We came by car, but it was a long drive, and I slept a little. When I woke up, we were already here. Do you see any sign? Any name nearby?" "I can't look out the window right now. Mama might wake up." His voice trembled. "She's different, Grandma. She says weird things. She says you want to hurt us." "Don't believe her, sweetie. I'm doing everything to find you." There was a silence, then a sound of movement. When Devin spoke again, his voice was even quieter. "There's a mailbox at the entrance. It says Riverwood Ranch, Highway 142. My heart pounded. It was the clue we needed. "Devin, you are amazing," I whispered. "Now listen closely. Find a safe place to hide. The police are on their way, but it might take a little while. You need to stay away from your mother. Do you understand?" "I understand. There's an old barn behind the house. I'm going to hide there." "That's it, sweetie. And Devin," I hesitated, feeling my throat tighten, "I love you so, so much. Everything is going to be all right." "I love you too, Grandma," he whispered. Then in an even quieter tone, "She's moving. I have to hang up." The call dropped. I jumped to my feet, relaying the information to the sergeant. Within minutes, an operation was organized. The state highway heading west had several ranches and properties near Highway 142, but a place called Riverwood Ranch would be easy to locate. "You must stay here," the sergeant said as the officers prepared. "We'll go get your grandson and arrest your daughter." But I couldn't just wait. Devin was alone, facing the terror of discovering that his own mother was capable of harming him and his grandmother. He needed to see a familiar face when he was rescued. "I'm coming with you," I said in a tone that admitted no discussion. "I can wait in the patrol car, far from the danger, but I need to be there for Devin." After some resistance, the sergeant agreed on the condition that I remain a safe distance away until the situation was controlled. Wallace insisted on accompanying me despite his injuries. "I promised the boy I'd protect him," he simply said. And so, at the first light of dawn, we set off westward in a caravan of patrol cars. The sun was rising on the horizon, painting the sky with pink and golden hues that contrasted cruelly with the darkness in my heart. During the journey, I couldn't stop thinking about what had driven Candace to this point. My sweet girl whom I had cradled in my arms, whom I had watched take her first steps, say her first words. How had she transformed into someone capable of coldly plotting the death of her own mother and her own son? Money was certainly part of the answer, but there was something else, a coldness, a disconnection that I had watched grow over the years. Perhaps it began after my son-in-law's death, or perhaps the signs were there much earlier, and I, blinded by a mother's love, refused to see them. These bitter reflections accompanied me throughout the journey as I watched the urban landscape gradually give way to fields and small rural properties. When we finally reached Highway 142, my heart was in my throat. A discreet sign indicated the entrance to Riverwood Ranch, a dirt road that wound through trees until it disappeared around a bend. The police stopped the patrol cars before the entrance to avoid alerting Candace. From there on, they would proceed on foot, surrounding the property. "Wait here, Ms. Ilara," the sergeant said in a firm but kind tone. "I promise we'll bring your grandson back safely." I nodded, resigned. Wallace held my hand as we watched the officers move away in tactical formation, disappearing among the trees. The minutes that followed were the longest of my life. Sitting in the patrol car, I strained to look out the window, trying to see something beyond the trees. The police radio crackled occasionally with coded communications that I couldn't understand. Then we heard a distant shout, agitated voices, and the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. That single shot echoed in the tranquil morning like thunder, making my heart stop for a second. Without thinking, I opened the patrol car door and started running down the dirt road, ignoring Wallace's shouts behind me. Ms. Ilara, come back! But I couldn't wait. Devon was in there, my grandson, my light, the only person who truly mattered. I ran, as I hadn't run in decades, ignoring the pain in my injured hip and my gasping breath. Age seemed to have vanished, driven by the adrenaline of fear. Wallace came limping behind me, trying to catch up. Rounding the bend in the road, I saw the house, a simple 2-story structure with a wooden porch. About 100 yards behind it was an old barn, exactly as Devon had described. Police officers were positioned around the property, weapons drawn. There was movement on the porch. I squinted, trying to see better, and felt my blood run cold as I recognized Candace. She was pale, disheveled, almost unrecognizable in the fury that distorted her face. In one hand, she held something that gleamed under the morning sun, a gun. And with the other arm, she was holding Devon in front of her, like a human shield. "Nobody come closer!" she screamed, her voice cutting shrilly through the air. "Or I swear I'll shoot!" The sergeant was positioned a few yards from the porch, partially protected by a tree. "Miss Candace, drop the weapon and let the boy go," he spoke in a firm but calm tone. "There is no way out of here. The house is surrounded." "You don't understand," Candace shrieked, her voice cracking. "She stole everything from me. My father left that money for me, not for her. She never let me touch anything, always controlling, always dictating how I should live." I stood paralyzed a few feet away, hidden by the patrol car parked further up. Her words hit me like stabs. This is how she saw me, as a controller who deprived her of what was rightfully hers. Devon was pale, his eyes wide with terror, but strangely calm. His eyes scanned the surrounding area, as if looking for an escape route. Even in that extreme situation, my grandson maintained the presence of mind that characterized him. "Your father left the money for all of us," the sergeant replied, trying to buy time. "I'm sure we can resolve this without anyone getting hurt." "Lie!" Candace tightened her arm around Devon. "She manipulated the will. She always manipulated everything, and now she's making me look crazy, making up stories that I want to kill her." Wallace finally reached me, gasping. He grabbed my arm, preventing me from advancing further. "Don't expose yourself," he whispered. "The police know what they're doing." But I couldn't stand still. With every second that passed, the situation seemed more volatile. Candace was visibly unstable, her eyes wide and wild, the hand holding the gun trembling slightly. That's when I noticed Devon looking directly toward the barn behind the house. His eyes darted back and forth as if trying to communicate something to me. I followed his gaze and noticed an officer silently positioning himself behind the barn, moving to flank the house. I understood what Devon was doing. He was consciously distracting his mother, keeping her focused on the front of the house, while the police positioned themselves behind. Even in that terrible situation, my 7-year-old grandson was cooperating with the police, showing a courage and intelligence that left me speechless. "Candace," I called, taking a step forward, ignoring Wallace's desperate pull on my arm. She turned sharply, the gun pointed in my direction. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You!" she hissed. "How did you escape? You should be dead in the fire." "There was no fire, Candace," I replied calmly, taking another step. The police tensed but did not interfere, realizing I was buying time. "Your plan failed because Devon overheard everything. He saved our lives." Candace's face twisted into a mix of rage and disbelief. She looked at Devon, who held her gaze without blinking. "You," she whispered to her son. "You betrayed me." "He didn't betray anyone," I said, continuing to advance slowly. "He just protected the person he loves, just as I always tried to protect you." "Protect?" She laughed, a jarring, almost hysterical sound. "You suffocated me, always controlling my life, my money, my dreams. When Dad died, that money should have been mine." "The money was never the problem, Candace," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Your father wanted you to live on your own merits, not dependent on an inheritance. He loved you. I love you." "Lie!" she screamed, the hand holding the gun visibly shaking. "If you loved me, you would have given me what was rightfully mine." In that moment, I realized that nothing I said would convince her. Greed and resentment had corroded her mind for years, perhaps decades, transforming her into someone I barely recognized. "Let Devin go," I pleaded, now only a few feet from the porch. "He has nothing to do with this. It's between you and me." I saw a flash of something, hesitation, perhaps even guilt, cross Candace's face. For a brief moment, it seemed she considered my plea. It was in that instant that Devin acted. With a quick movement that took everyone by surprise, he bit the arm holding him and lunged sideways, rolling off the porch. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. Candace screamed in pain. The gun fired, the shot going wild into the air, and police officers advanced from every direction. I ran the last few feet to the porch, ignoring the police officers' shouts to stand clear. All I could see was Devin, huddled next to the railing, trembling. I reached him at the same moment the police officers tackled Candace, forcing her to the ground and handcuffing her. She screamed and struggled, unrecognizable in her fury. I hugged Devin with all the strength I had left, feeling his small body tremble against mine. He was alive. He was safe. "Grandma," he whispered, clinging to me. "You came." "I will always come, my love," I replied, tears finally rolling freely. "Always." Over Devin's shoulder, my eyes met Candace's as she was led away by the officers. For a moment, mother and daughter looked at each other across the insurmountable chasm that now separated us. There was no longer rage in her eyes, only a desolate emptiness. The woman I had known, my daughter, seemed to have completely disappeared, leaving only a shell of what she was. And then she was gone, taken to the patrol car. I focused entirely on Devin, on the miracle of having him safe in my arms. The sun now shone high in the sky, illuminating my grandson's tear-streaked face. I ran my hand through his hair, amazed by his courage. "How did you know she was planning that?" I asked softly, when we were sitting in the ambulance that had arrived to check us. "How did you manage to figure out her plan?" Devin bit his lower lip, thoughtful. "I always wake up early, Grandma. Mama thinks I sleep in, but I actually just stay still in bed, thinking." I smiled, stroking his face, so observant, so attentive to everything. "That morning, I heard her on the phone," he continued. "She was talking differently, like she was mad but trying not to show it. I went to the hallway and listened by the office door." The paramedic finished checking Devin's vital signs and gave us some privacy, moving away to talk to the police. "She talked about the gas and about us sleeping." Devin lowered his voice. "And she said she wanted Grandpa's money, that she was tired of waiting, and that it was going to look like an accident." He looked at me, his eyes suddenly older than his age. "I knew no one would believe me if I told them. Adults never believe kids when it's something important." That last sentence broke my heart. How many times had he tried to warn me before with small observations that I had dismissed as childish imagination? "But I believed you at the airport," I said softly. A small smile lit up his face. "Yes, you believed me when it mattered." I hugged him again, feeling immense gratitude for this small being whose extraordinary perception had saved us. The sergeant approached us, his face showing a mix of relief and concern. "Devin and you need to go to the hospital for a full checkup," he said. "Afterward, we'll need detailed statements, but that can wait a little." I nodded, grateful for his sensitivity. "Candace," I hesitated, still unable to fully process